Welcome to Stuck, Time to Improv. I'm Mary Scott with Business Riff, and I want startup businesses to be wildly successful. Today, we're going to talk about the fact that sometimes big companies, particularly big energy companies, are looking to invest in startups. And we have today Hector Barresi from Sextant International, who's an expert in the field of big energy and can help us understand what kinds of things these companies are looking for. Welcome, Hector.
Thank you so much, Mary, for inviting me. I'm glad to be here.
Sure. So let's talk about big energy. We're talking about the petroleum industry or other kinds of energy.
Right. Well, for me, energy has kind of two sides. One is the petroleum, fossil fuels, etc., like oil and gas, for example, right? And then you have power generation, which are the companies that use that fuel to produce power or energy, right? And or motion. There is strong need for artificial intelligence, IoT, and this is an area where, in fact, there are most, I would say, opportunities to work with startups. Why is that? Because just to give you an idea, there are about 189 startups just working on what is called predictive maintenance, right? So any refinery, any power plant uses turbines, big machines that cost millions of dollars. And when they fail, they're so expensive to replace. And there are so many small startups working on artificial intelligence technologies, sensing technologies, communication that would enable these large energy companies to monitor their assets, to predict when they're going to fail, minimize the leaks. Anything that really contributes to pollution can be measured, detected, and predicted. So the opportunities are, I would say, endless, plenty of opportunities.
Okay, so artificial intelligence in the area of predictive maintenance. So that's a good one. So startups, if you're interested in those kinds of things, that's a space for you. What other kinds of spaces are there for startups in the energy industry?
There is a new, I would say, type of startups that are emerging now about supply chain. And obviously, who are their clients of these startups? These are the big companies, right? They need to know what's going to happen next month with, my gas, my supply of gas, my supply of oil, my supply of whatever they need to stay up. And so they monitor all these sites and companies for wars, for earthquakes, floods, the next, virus around the world, and they can predict within certain limits, what's going to happen with the supply of oil, what's going to happen with the supply of microcomponents. Obviously, energy companies are going to be more focused on oil and other fuels. But that's an interesting trend. And right now, there are not many of these companies, but the few out there doing this are becoming almost unicorns, companies around $1 billion valuation just of that particular technology that they have that not many can really master at this point. There is a third category, I would say, of startups that are focused on recycling, focused on minimizing leaks, focusing on how to not to do certain things that could be avoided. For example, how to modify some cycles in refining so that the end product is more recyclable than it used to be. Obviously, that comes with the price, which is sort of what British Petroleum was trying to accomplish, is how do we make sure that we produce the same fuel or the same gasoline, but the impact is, whatever remains, which is a waste, is easier to recycle. And like you said about this company that could be put back somehow into the ground without having a negative impact on the environment.
So recycling, predictive maintenance, more efficient production techniques. These are all areas that startups can look at in the energy industry. Is there anything particular to wind or solar that companies are looking for?
Full of things very interesting. In fact, this morning I was reading about a startup that is looking at trying to figure out the life of the batteries in the big energy storage buildings or facilities. Each wind farm, or most of them, have some energy storage capabilities, because sometimes they overproduce electricity and otherwise it would be wasted. So it's big buildings with a bunch of batteries in them and inverters and so on, etc. But those batteries, so far, apart from being big and expensive, nobody could predict how long they're going to last. And why is that important? You need to understand that whoever invests in a wind farm typically invests with a 20 to 25 years view in the future. So they don't expect returns immediately, but over 20, 25 years. So understanding if every, let's say, 5 years, they would have to replace the whole bench of batteries at a millionaire cost will affect their ROI. So this is very interesting that now, at least they're in the very beginning, they are working with this called the digital twins. This startup basically build an equivalent of these batteries, and they try to predict thousands of charges and discharges and see how long they would last. And I found that very interesting. In the area of wind, it's sort of similar. Each wind farm has this hundreds of turbines with those huge blades that you see. Sometimes they're like hundreds or plus, longer feet, and they crack. And but it's difficult to detect. And especially in offshore, when you have an electric storm, the thunder typically goes through the cracks, and the blades could explode. Just basically, you have a useless wind turbine because of the combination of the cracks with the thunder. So there are some technologies which are trying to predict, or to detect at least, not necessarily predict, but detect the cracks in the blades so that something can be done about it. How are they doing it today? Well, the simplest way is just have a drone flying around the wind turbine, and you take photos of the blades, or you take photos from the ground, which is not the most practical way to do it. So there are some companies now starting to look at technologies that could do that via fiber optics, ultrasound, some other technologies. So that's
I was thinking ultrasound potentially could capture when a crack happens, because they always make a noise when they happen.
Yeah, that obviously the vibration is different, the resonances are different, and this is technology more around really hardware. All the other startups are more in the software. But I wanted to bring this up because this is really about you can also innovate, and you can have very interesting startups in sensors and hardware and connectivity in general as well.
And materials production as well. What are the blades made out of now? How did they get repaired? What did they be replaced with? Can you come up with something that's lighter or more resistant to cracks, depending on the weather of wherever these things are placed? This has been fascinating, Hector Barresi from Sextant International. Do you have any parting thoughts?
I'm just saying, I think that's an area that is, if you are a startup, and there are so many opportunities in the energy sector. Some energy sectors are growing faster than others. Remember that wind energy is growing about 20 to 25% per year, as opposed to coal, right, or gas. So pick the right industry. That if you are a startup and you're developing a product, always look for the fastest growing industry markets right now, which is solar and wind. So that's good. All from my side. I appreciate your invitation today, Mary.
Thank you very much. And Again, this is Mary Scott from Business Riff. I want startups to be wildly successful. So join us again for Stuck, Time to Improv.